The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. Today we are going to talk about forming and fostering friendships in dogs. But first, we're going to start with the quirky tip of the day. Oh, he sounds like he's got a little bronchitis or something, this pig. All right, our quirky tip today is, you guys, you cannot force friendships in dogs. And I just want to make that clear. Dogs are going to pick who they want their friends to be. And as much as you want to be like, oh, but my neighbor I walk with down the street, I really want them to be close, may never happen. You cannot force a friendship in dogs and let dogs pick their own friends. Okay, so this is a topic that has come up because I think that friendships in dogs are a little more rare than people realize. So yes, dogs are definitely, some dogs are just very social and they enjoy all dogs, and maybe they're over the top and they're like inappropriate in the way they want to greet dogs. I'm thinking of the doodle walking down the street, any dog they see, you know, front paws in the air. Oh my God, it's a dog, I have to go see you. But true friendships in dogs, like dogs that continuously seek each other out to play, model play styles, maybe they want to, you know, cuddle next to each other, this type of thing. It's a little more rare than you may think. And friendships form in daycare settings quite often. Friendships form sometimes within the household. If you have multiple dogs, there's certain dogs who are closer than others. But it's something that we haven't really touched on here, and I think it's important for people to get a little more of an understanding to. And dog friendships can really serve the dog to have a more full and, you know, fulfilling life. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here today.
Feel free.
This is going to be a me podcast, I guess. So I guess, do you have any dogs that were friends that you think? I guess we could have talked through this beforehand, but do you, in your years past, I guess Gigi and Kane were close?
Yeah, no, of course the dogs within the household, most of the time, they all get along fine with each other.
But like friends, like they were closer than
Yeah,
normal.
I think that Gigi, the Pomeranian, was more outgoing than Kane, the Malinois, although Kane enjoyed Gigi, but she was the one that was always initiating, hey,
So she was seeking him out.
Let's do something.
But like that was an unlikely friendship. I mean, Malinois that's, 70 pounds and a little Pomeranian that's not even 5 pounds. And that's the thing. Friendships are not always based on size. Of course, there are dogs that form friendships with other species. There have been great stories of dogs and horses and dogs and goats and dogs and chickens and all that.
Pigs.
We're not getting into pigs. Yes, we're
Tigers.
not getting into we're not getting
Dogs
into
are really good with tigers. That's an interesting, go look that up on YouTube. That's pretty cool.
Okay. We're not going to get into any of the stuff, the cross-species friendships and stuff here. But of course, dogs can form friendships with other species that are, outside of the dog species. We are talking dog-to-dog friendships. And I think it's an interesting thing because they kind of like, when they're in their friendship moments or whatever, if you want to call it that, like when they're playing or whatever, they're very like exclusive, like, no, you need to stay out. And this happens a lot in daycare settings. I know a lot of people who have worked in daycares. I, cross-reference this with everybody. I've seen it myself in large groups of dogs. You have 2 or 3 or 4 dogs playing and then another dog wants to come and they all basically like chase that dog away. Like, no, you go find your own friends. This is our group, everything. This happens in our, what?
It's a pretty elitist group there.
It happens in our house. So I have this video. I'll have Chrissy pull it up in a second here. So this is Sink. Sink is going to be 14 in March. So she's like 13 and a half, 13 and 3/4. Gaia is 9, 10-ish. She's a rescue. They're friends. They are the closest friends in our household. Sink loves Gaia. Gaia is more social with all dogs, but she definitely plays differently with Sink. And this is a friendship that we have within our own house. So if you could play this video real quick, Chrissy, it's like less than a minute. Are you at daycare? Are you doing daycare? You doing your ninja spin, Bug? You doing ninja spins? Look at my Miss
Look
Bug.
more like
She
two
looks-
dogs with a mental problem.
She looks good for almost 14. You be nice. But I mean, this is a good example. So these dogs are more paired size-wise, a little more evenly than some other friendships, but they're mimicking play styles a lot. You know, they're play bowing, they're spinning. You heard like this friendly sneezing and stuff going on. And this is how they interact every single time they go out. First thing in the morning, they're a little more rowdy than others, but they literally go potty and then they come up on the deck and they play, and they would play for 15, 20 minutes, you know, if I always had the time and I let them play for that long. Sometimes I have to cut it short. So, you know, it's nice to see that. It's really fun for Sink. Sink does not play with a lot of dogs, and they definitely have a very similar way that they interact, and they just kind of have their own scene. If another dog walks into that, they're very like, nope, you're not going to join in on this. Vital, like, always is like the odd man out, trying to like be like, oh, can I please be there? And they don't acknowledge her. They act like she's not there. They act like she doesn't exist. Typically, no matter if the size is similar or not, the play styles are going to be similar. So like the bully breeds will sometimes play more with the other bully breeds than, you know, a Doodle or a Bernese Mountain Dog or something else, because their play style is a lot more like
Physical.
Yes, they're used to like throwing each other around. They like that. Not every single dog likes that. So you may see a little bit of a discrepancy there as far as play styles go and everything else. But these all form on their own accord, and they form pretty naturally. And like we said at the very beginning, you're just not going to be able to force something like this. Your dog is going to pick and choose who they want to hang out with and who they want their friends to be. And yes, play is an important part of it, and I consider that an important part of friendship, but sometimes it's just like they seek this dog out to go cuddle with on the couch, or they're chewing a bone and they choose to share their bone or share their toy with their friend versus just any dog that walks by. It's very rare that you just have a dog sitting there at daycare with, 40 dogs walking by and they're just to any dog, take my toy, take my toy, take my toy. There's specific dogs that they are seeking out, that they want to share with, that they want to hang out with, that they want to nab with. And similarly, these friends are going to start patterning behaviors, right? So if there's a dog play group and you consider that they're like a friend or a clique, if a couple of them are barky, likely the whole group is going to start getting barky. They start to mimic how the other one behaves, unless the like more dominant, I hate to say dominant alpha, but the more like the strongest presence of the group, chooses to be calm and lay down and settle. Maybe the other dogs will do that, but most likely they're going to be catering to the least common denominator, and the bad behavior is going to spread quicker than the good behavior. So these are all little things to look for, and I think it's beautiful when dog friendships unfold, and I just think that people don't realize that it is a little more rare than your standard run-of-the-mill, like, hey, the dogs sniffed each other at the vet. That's so great. Friendships are long-lasting. Dogs, they're reoccurring. They're happening time and time again.
Well, I have a good example of this. I have 3 clients that all want to take their dog to the beach. They all want to have their dogs off leash, and I got. First, I was, one of them was a client, then they referred me to their girlfriend, and then referred me to another. But what was interesting was 2 of the dogs get along great with each other on the beach. So they can let the dogs, the 2 people will walk the beach. These 2 dogs will just fly around the beach, just running, playing tag, and just playing dog games. The only downside in that scenario that they were having was that the dogs weren't respectful of the humans' space. So they come whipping by and take somebody's legs out, and a person would fall on the ground on the beach, which is unacceptable.
They were older clients too, so
it doesn't
wasn't
matter.
the best.
It doesn't
but it wasn't
matter.
the best.
It shouldn't be doing that. So they played they were a little bit rough and just weren't being conscious of the humans within the context, or they were knocking them down intentionally and thought it was funny as hell. That could be the case too. But the third dog, it was obnoxious in the play, pawing on the head, getting over the shoulder, just being more dominant, more obnoxious, and just pissing off the other dog. And so you're trying to make that work. And this is where it's really nice to have some obedience on these dogs, so that you can let 2 dogs play. And I'm even thinking about the first 2, where they're playing really borderline aggressively, but just running and all out. I don't like dogs to get where they're just in that space of totally unconscious of humans and just running around being obnoxious, because usually something is going to go wrong eventually. And the two dogs can wind up getting in a fight where one starts getting tired, and the younger one wants to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then the older one has to correct the younger one. Hey, back off, give me some space. It's nice to be able to call your dog out of play and just have them tone it down for a few minutes, and then you can let them go play again. Just reel them in a little bit, and then let them go play.
So what happened to the third overly exuberant
The third
dog?
one, they're just not, it's not part of, it's not happening.
Kicked out of the club.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like the people love each other, but they're like, oh, that dog is just too much. Now, it could be that the dog that's playing a little bit rough and is obnoxious, it's a very young dog. It's only just a year old. So as it matures, it's going to come down a bit, but it just needs more control put on it. But the downside is that they like to go to the beach, these three women, but they can't all three be together. So
or the naughty dog is just going to have to stay on a leash.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to break super quick, and we can come back. We'll talk more about friendships.
Want to keep up with all the latest from the Quirky Dog podcast like me and Murphy here? Then make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Or if you prefer to listen to the madness, go on over to iTunes or Spotify and follow the Quirky Dog podcast. And hey, while you're there, leave a rating and review and let them know what you think of the show. Until then, keep it quirky.
All right, we're back. So I'm glad that Scott mentioned control because this is an important part of friendships with dogs and everything else. So if you have dogs that love each other, let's go back to the beach scenario. They cannot just be running with reckless abandon on the beach and not have a recall. And a lot of people will rely on, the one dog comes and the other dog follows. I personally don't like that as a rule of thumb. Whatever dogs I have playing or hanging out as friends, I want to make sure that I have good control of each of them. And furthermore, if your dog's, friend is at your cousin's house and you go to your cousin's house on, Fridays or whatever, Friday nights after work, all this stuff, make sure that you have some control from the car to get to the house, because things like this just start to grow and escalate and get out of hand as well, right? Like at first the dog's, jumping up at the car window and excited, and then the dog's pulling you inside, and then the dog's flying out of the car and, jumping, running to the front door. Like it starts to become a safety issue too. So yes, we love dogs that are friends. We want to help foster those friendships. Everything else is dog owners, but make sure you have control in these settings as well, because when they get, like Scott's saying, completely disconnected from the owner, they no longer have an ear out for you. They're in their own little world. That is not necessarily good for them mentally or physically. The less they're thinking, the easier they can get hurt as well. So be conscious of that.
One thing I would urge people to be thoughtful about is if you have a neighbor across the street that has a dog, and you've brought your dog over there and they've had a big play date and they're having a great time. The downside to that is that if your dog gets out the front door, or if the gate's open on your property, they're going to run into the street. They're going to run across the street to see their buddy. And hopefully it's not a busy street, but it's always, if it's a street, that means cars are on it. So I get real stressed about that. I don't want, and I've had people say, oh yeah, my dog gets out all the time. I walk across the street. He's always over at his friend's house. But they don't have control of the dog. They're not managing the dog safely. And the dog is getting repetitions 2-3 times a week of running into the street. And that's just scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
I do not want to have that happen. So you want to be conscious of, and it happens quite often. I've seen it many times where there's a dog in the neighborhood somewhere, and my client's dog is friends with that dog, and either that dog is running down the street to their house, or their dog is running up the street to the other person's house, and it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
It's not good.
I mean, it scares me, that's all.
And think about playing in a more neutral setting. Maybe you both drive to the park. Maybe you just get in the car, drive around the block, and then park at your neighbor's driveway. You know what I mean? But yes, this constant repetition of you're walking your dog from your house across the street to play with their best friend. Think twice about that. And then also...
It doesn't take much. One time with a great play date, and they're never going to forget it.
No, it's true. And also... be conscious of the behaviors that happen before the dogs are playing. Like I said, as far as if you show up to your cousin's house and there's barking and everything else, this can spill over into other things. If your dog is whining, and then gets to play with the other dog, now maybe your dog's whining to go outside in the backyard. Maybe your dog's whining to eat. Make sure that you understand that whatever behavior you're rewarding your dog with to go hang out with their friend is a behavior that you're going to see that's popping up more frequently. So maybe start to manage that as well, because it's not just going to show up where the dog sees its friend. It's going to show up in any situation where the dog desires something and then hopes that the outcome will be that the dog gets what he or she wants, which typically happens in a friendship type of setting because they see each other and then they play, or they see each other and then they go chew bones together. So be conscious of what you're allowing the precursor of the friendship to be. And I do think that, people sometimes think, oh, my dog's super social, it doesn't matter. Maybe other dogs are not as social and they do not want to form friendships. So be respectful of that as well. It's so often that the dog owner is like, oh yeah, my dog loves everybody, everything's fine. Some dogs are more standoffish. They want to be more neutral. They don't want to be freaking having somebody jumping in their face, like Scott's saying about this third wheel dog on the beach. Like, dogs aren't real receptive to that. They don't like that. So if you own the overly social dog, if you own the outgoing dog, if you own the dog that wants to be friends with everything that breathes, make sure that you are putting some control on your dog and you're respectful of other people and their own dogs as well, because that is the type of situation where your super friendly dog that wanted to see the dog that didn't want to be seen, now they have a big dog fight, and your super friendly dog goes into a dog who's maybe now more reactive or becoming fearful of dogs or something else. Things can shift very, very, very quickly. It can take one massive incident and your dog is going to see the way he or she thinks about dogs differently right from the beginning. It's happened to us before, and it can be very quick.
Yeah, the other side of the coin is that they do get along well, and this is probably more often the case. And with my example earlier, all three of the owners of these dogs was involved in obedience training so that they could have their dogs off leash, get them to come back when they called them and all that. So they were on the right track. But quite often, and it happens with my clients, because I have a client who's trying to get control of their dog, wants their dog to have some social skills and some decent manners. And their friend has a dog they don't do any training with. The dog is totally obnoxious. I mean, the dog is just out of control all the time. Your dog loves that dog. Your dog is going to pick up all the bad habits when those dogs are together, because the other people aren't putting control on their dog. So the only way to control anything is you getting your dog back. But the other dog could be barking, and now your dog's barking. All the things we talked about, jumping on people. And now your dog starts jumping on people because the other dog's jumping on people and getting food for it, or God knows what.
Yeah. So, as the dog's owners, you can manage the access
leave the dog home.
Friends.
If you don't like the way your friend's dog behaves, just leave your dog home. That's all. He doesn't have to get into you don't have to have a confrontation with the people, because they're happy with their dog. They're happy with their dog just being an idiot. Great. I don't need to subject my dog to your dog's behavior.
Yeah.
That's all.
And, we have Thanksgiving coming up. Thanksgiving weekend is right upon us here. And, probably expanding your dog's inner circle is a better podcast as it relates to that type of situation with, dogs from the same family and everything joining up. But be respectful of the people who are at these events. Be respectful of the food of Thanksgiving, the table of Thanksgiving food, a lot of those things that the dogs can't eat. Be mindful of these times, and don't let dogs just go and be off and on their own accord without any supervision. They need some guidance. And if you have this type of situation where you have a friendship within your family and your dog's meeting that friend, and maybe a new dog's coming this year or something else, beware that these super social dogs could be a little pissed off because, the new rescue that just, your brother just got last week is now trying to join in on the play. And they're like, no, this isn't how it works. We've been doing this 5 or 6 years on our own. So be thoughtful of these things. Try to have a plan, and be an advocate for your dog. Less is more. Let there be a lot of fun, and then, 15, 20 minutes of fun, let's take a little break. Ideally, dogs are conditioned to crates. Ideally, dogs have decent manners on a leash. You can take them for a walk around the block. Give the dogs a little bit of downtime. Just like Scott said, even the best of friends can get at each other's throats when, emotions are heightened and there's a lot of stimulation.
Yeah.
And at these family events and at holidays and stuff, there can be a lot of stimulation and a lot of energy, and the dogs are going to feed off of that completely.
I got in a couple of fistfights with my really good friends when I was a teenager. Can you believe it?
You did a lot.
We were
You did a
friggin'
lot
idiots.
wrong.
We just beat each other up.
Yeah.
But, I was going to say, Thanksgiving, keeping Thanksgiving in mind. Be very conscious of those turkey bones. Like, you're going to have a carcass. You're going to have all kinds of, You should have bones left over. They've all been cooked. I would double bag them. Don't just throw them in your trash with the way you normally would throw a lot of stuff away, because if dogs get into those cooked turkey bones, it could be a real problem for the dogs.
Yeah, I'll actually link Expanding Your Dog's Inner Circle and our Thanksgiving podcast that we did many years ago about dogs and Thanksgiving food in the show notes of this, so you guys have a little food for thought as you head into the weekend. Thank you guys so much for being viewers and listeners of The Quirky Dog. We are grateful for you this year. I hope that you learned something about dog friendships, and you're not going to try to force anything, and you're going to let your dogs go and be free, happy chickens over this long weekend. If you need anything from us, you know where to find us. And in the meantime, keep it quirky. Bye, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.